My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that I spent 4 years at the HFY Combat Academy, on a ring station orbiting a gas giant nobody back home could even pronounce right. It was the kind of place species sent their best. Not their strongest necessarily, their sharpest. The ones who could read a battlefield like a page, who could outthink a superior force, who had that thing you can't train into someone. Every species in the compact had a seat there. Every species except one. Humans weren't in the compact yet. Not really. They were what the instructors called provisional observers, a species still on probation after the war that ended 9 years before I was born. Most of us had never seen one in person. We'd seen the footage. Everyone had seen the footage. But footage is footage. It doesn't smell like anything. It doesn't make the floor vibrate when you're standing near it. So when they told us a human cadet was being admitted, first one ever, some kind of diplomatic gesture, some kind of test, nobody really explained which. The whole ring hummed with it for a week straight. Rumors moving through the mess hall faster than the recycled air. She arrived on a transport that docked at 600, station time, and by 700 half, the academy had found a reason to be near the arrivals bay. I remember the first thing I felt wasn't fear, it was disappointment. She was small. That's the thing nobody tells you about humans from the footage. The footage shows soldiers in armor, in formation, doing things that make your stomach drop. It doesn't show you that a human woman, out of her gear, in a plain gray cadet uniform 2 sizes too big in the shoulders, looks like she'd blow away in a strong wind. Her name was Rays. Just Rays, that's what she told the registrar, and that's what stuck. Dark hair pulled back tight, a scar through one eyebrow that nobody asked about not yet, and eyes that moved over the crowd once, cataloging it, before she stopped looking at us entirely. Like she'd already decided we weren't the thing to watch for. I found that strange even then. You don't ignore a room full of armed cadets from 6 different apex species, unless you've decided something else in the room is more dangerous than they are. I just didn't know yet what that something else was. Part 2. The academy didn't slow down for her. That's not how HFY worked. You didn't get eased in. You got thrown into rotation with everyone else, and if you sank in front of the whole ring. First week she didn't say much. She sat at the end of tables alone, eating whatever the dispensers gave her without complaint, even the stuff the Drevoxy kids wouldn't touch because it smelled, in their words, like a dying thing. She took notes in a paper notebook, actual paper, which half the cadets thought was some kind of statement until someone pointed out humans just did that. It wasn't performance, it was habit. She was quiet in a way that read as calm to some of us, and as something else to others. I shared a tactics seminar with her. Instructor Vel Catherine ran it, an old Threll officer, 3 combat tour, the kind of instructor who didn't raise his voice because he'd learned a long time ago that a quiet voice makes a room lean in closer than a loud one. He liked to run cadets through scenario drills. Cold open. No prep. He'd read out a situation and expect you to think out loud live in front of everyone. Second week he called on her. Cadet Rays, your unit is pinned in a corridor. Enemy holds both exits. You have 4 soldiers, 1 wounded, minimal ordnance. What do you do? The room went quiet the way rooms do, when everyone's waiting to see if the new person embarrasses themselves. She didn't stand up straight or clear her throat, or do any of the things the rest of us did when we got called on. She just said flat, like she was reading off a shopping list. Depends which exit they think I'll pick. Vel Catherine tilted his head. Explain. They've split their force to cover both exits, which means neither exit is fully covered. If I make it loud and obvious that I'm making a break for exit 1, draw their attention and their numbers, then the actual play is exit 2, with the wounded soldier moved first under the noise. The wounded goes first, not last. Everyone always says the wounded goes last. That's why it doesn't work. Catherine was quiet for a second, and if they see through the feint. Then I lost soldiers making noise, instead of losing them running blind. I'll take that trade every time. I remember a Drevoxy cadet next to me, name of Sauron, muttering under his breath, something about how cold that sounded. Using your own soldiers as noise. She heard him. I know she heard him because her jaw moved, just slightly, before she answered without turning to look at him. You've never had to leave someone behind, she said. I'm not being cold. I'm telling you what it actually costs so nobody's shocked later when it costs that. Catherine didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he nodded once, like he'd confirmed something he'd already suspected, and moved on to the next cadet. That was the first time I understood she wasn't just some diplomatic placeholder sitting in our seminar so someone back home could say humans were integrating. She'd done this before, not in a simulation, somewhere real. Part 3. The rumors started small and grew the way rumors do in a place with too much recycled air, and not enough to talk about. Someone said she didn't sleep more than 3 hours a night, and the proctor logs backed it up. Her door badge showed activity at all hours, gym access at 300, mess hall at 400, like her body just refused to shut all the way down. Someone said she'd been seen doing physical conditioning that made the Threll strength instructor go quiet and just watch instead of correcting her form, because there was nothing to correct. Someone said, and this one took a while to get confirmed, but it did get confirmed, that she'd requested, formally in writing, that her medical scans not be shared with other cadets or instructors outside the medical staff, which was her right. Every species had privacy protections written into the Academy Charter, but it made people wonder. It made people build stories in the gaps. I didn't think much of it at first. Every species has its oddities. The Threll can't stand silence and hum constantly, low in their chest, and it took me a full semester not to flinch at it. The Corvi sleep standing. Humans not sleeping much, being strong for their size, keeping to themselves fine. New species, new baseline. What changed things was the sparring match. Part 4. Combat rotation ran every 10 days. Not full contact. The Academy wasn't in the business of getting cadets killed over pride, but close. Padded strikes, monitored vitals, a proctor ready to call it the second someone's reading spiked wrong. Cadets were matched roughly by size and species class, but every so often the instructors liked to mix it. For education, they said, which really meant they liked watching what happened when nobody had a clean comparison to lean on. They matched Rays against a cadet named Dreeth Asun. Dreeth was Calvori. If you don't know the species, picture something built the way a mountain is built, not fast but final. Calvori averaged close to 3 meters standing, dense-boned, skin like tanned leather over muscle that moved slow and heavy and absolute. Dreeth was near the top of his year in strength scoring. He wasn't cruel, exactly. But he had that particular arrogance you get in someone who's never once in his life had to consider losing. The match was scheduled in the main ring, and by the time it started, the observation deck was full. Word had gotten around. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when the strange, quiet human went up against someone who could, by every measurement the Academy tracked, break her in half without trying hard. I was there, front row of the deck, close enough to hear the proctor's voice crack through the comm giving the ready call. Dreeth didn't even do the standard bow. He just grinned, this big slow Calvori grin, and said something to her I couldn't hear from the deck, but I saw her face, and it didn't change. Not one bit. She just settled into a stance, low, weight-balanced, hands loose, the way you stand when you're not trying to look ready. You just are ready and don't need anyone to know it yet. The proctor called start. Dreeth moved first, big committed step, a strike meant to end things fast, and here's the part that changed how the whole ring talked about her for the rest of the year. She wasn't there. Not gone in a blur, not some impossible thing. Just she'd read the strike a half-second before it landed, and she'd already stepped past where it was going, inside his reach. and by the time the deck had finished registering that he'd swung and missed, she put 3 fast strikes into the side of his knee, his ribs, and the joint of his arm, precise, controlled, textbook pressure points that any of us would have recognized from anatomy lecture, but none of us had ever seen actually used like that, live, at speed, on a moving target 3 times her size. Dreeth went down, not knocked out, just down. His leg buckled and he went to one knee and the whole deck went dead silent. She didn't press the advantage, didn't finish it showy. She just stepped back, dropped her hands and waited, breathing steady, like she'd done nothing more strenuous than walk up a flight of stairs. The proctor called the match. And here's the thing that actually scared people, not the speed, not the strikes. It was her face. She wasn't excited, wasn't satisfied, wasn't anything. She looked at Dreeth getting up off the mat, humiliated, furious, and she looked at him the way you'd look at weather. Not an enemy, not even really an opponent. Just something that had happened that she'd handled and now it was over. Soren, next to me on the deck, said it quiet, mostly to himself. She wasn't even trying. And that was the moment the whole ring stopped seeing her as the strange, quiet human cadet and started seeing her as something else. Something they didn't have a word for yet. Part 5. After that match, people gave her more room, not out of politeness, out of something closer to caution. I want to be honest about what that did to her, because I noticed it and I think about it still. She didn't get louder or more social, the way you'd think someone might once they'd proven themselves. She got quieter. She started eating even more alone. I saw her sitting by the observation window overlooking the gas giant some nights, just watching those slow orange storms roll across it, notebook closed in her lap, not writing. I sat near her once, didn't say anything for a while, neither did she. Eventually I asked, not about the match, not about the strength scores or the sleep logs or any of the things the rumor mill had been chewing on. I just asked, because it seemed like the actual question underneath all the others. Why'd you come here? Your people aren't even in the compact yet. She was quiet long enough that I thought she wasn't going to answer. Because somebody has to be first, she said, and it's better if it's someone who already knows what losing costs. I didn't push on that. Something in her voice told me not to. But over the weeks that followed in pieces at odd hours, she told me enough that I could put it together myself. She hadn't come to HFY straight from some training program back home. She'd come from the tail end of the border conflict, the one humanity fought alone, before the compact ever agreed to sit at a table with them, back when nobody outside human space believed they'd survive it. She didn't talk about specifics, just fragments. A unit that started at 12 and ended at 3. A commanding officer who didn't make it home. The reason she didn't sleep more than a few hours, not training, not discipline. Just a body that had learned the hard way that sleeping too deep meant you might not wake up in time. She wasn't dangerous because humans were naturally faster or stronger, pound for pound, than a cavalry. She was dangerous because she'd already lived through the thing this entire academy was built to simulate. Every scenario instructor Catherine threw at cadets, cold in a classroom, with time to think. She'd lived a version of it real, with no time, and she'd survived enough of them to build instincts the rest of us were still trying to build on paper. That was her secret, not a hidden power, not some biological trick, just this. She wasn't playing at being a soldier for the first time. She already was one. And the rest of us, no matter how sharp our species made us on paper, were still, every one of us, running our first real drill. Part 6. The thing that actually terrified people. And I want to be precise about this, because it wasn't the sparring match, not really. That was just the moment they noticed, was what happened 3 weeks later during the joint field exercise. HFY ran a live fire simulation twice a year, out on the surface of the Academy's training moon, full environmental suits, blank-crowned weapons that still hit hard enough to leave a mark and knock the wind out of you. 6 cadet squads, mixed species, competing against instructor-run opposition forces designed to be smarter and better equipped than any student team. Rays got put in my squad, along with Sauron, two Corvi twins named Ilik and Isa, and a Threll cadet Barrow who talked too much and meant well. The exercise went bad almost immediately, not because of us, but because of a genuine equipment failure, the kind the instructors insisted afterward wasn't scripted, though half the cadets never quite believed that. A pressure seal failed on Barrow's suit during the opening approach. Out on open ground, no cover, opposition force already moving toward our position. I've run a lot of drills since. I've seen a lot of people freeze in that first half second when something goes actually wrong instead of drill wrong. I know what a freeze looks like now. I saw 6 people almost do it that day, myself included. Rays didn't freeze. She had Barrow's arm before I'd even fully processed what the alarm klaxon in my helmet was telling me. She got him down, got a suit patch, the same kind we'd all been issued and half of us had never actually used outside a classroom demo, sealed over the breach in about 4 seconds, working half-blind because his suit's own systems were screaming warnings into both their comms at once. Then she got him moving. Not carried, moved, upright, her shoulder under his arm, weight distributed so he could still use his legs, talking to him the entire time in this low, steady voice completely different from the flat tone she used in seminar. I only caught pieces of it over the comm. "You're fine, SEALs holding, walk with me. Look at me, not the readout, walk with me." The opposition force was maybe 40 seconds out. Ilik and Isa had gone for cover, dragging me with them, and I remember screaming, actually screaming, not proud of it for her to leave him and move, because 40 seconds wasn't enough, because the exercise doctrine drilled into every one of us for 4 years said you didn't slow the whole squad for one soldier. You regrouped and you came back for them. That was the rule. Catherine himself had taught us that rule 2 months before in the exact seminar where she told him the wounded goes first, not last. She'd told us. She'd already told us in that seminar weeks before, and none of us had really understood she meant it as more than a tactics answer. She got Barrow to cover 4 seconds before the opposition force crested the ridge. 4 seconds. I've done the math on that more times than I want to admit. And then, this is the part that made it into the after-action report, the part that instructors talked about for the rest of the year, the part that I think is the real reason terrified is the right word and not an exaggeration. She didn't stay down with him. She went back out. Not recklessly, not some dramatic charge. She used the terrain low and fast, and she put herself between the opposition force's approach and the rest of the squad's position, drawing their attention, exactly the way she described in seminar. Loud on purpose, making herself the thing they'd focus on. I watched from cover. 180 centimeters of human cadet hold the attention of an entire simulated opposition squad. 6 instructors in full gear, running a scenario they'd built to be unfair on purpose for almost 90 seconds. Using cover, using angles, using the kind of economy of movement that doesn't come from a training manual. It comes from having done it before, for real, when the rounds weren't blank. She took 2 hits before the exercise clock ran out and the instructors called it. Center mass, both of them, the kind that would leave real bruising even through the suit padding. She went down hard on the second one and didn't get straight back up. For about 3 full seconds, before the medics reached her, I genuinely didn't know if she was actually hurt or just down, and I remember that not knowing sitting in my chest like a stone. Because somewhere in those 90 seconds, I'd stopped thinking of her as the strange, quiet human cadet and started thinking of her as the reason the rest of us were still breathing. She got up on her own before the medics got there, waved them off, walked back to the squad rally point under her own power, one hand pressed to her ribs, and the first thing she said, not to me, not to anyone in particular, just out loud to the group, was, "Barrow's seal holding." That was it. That was the whole question. Not are we okay collectively, not how'd we do, not anything about herself at all. Part 7. The after-action review happened 2 days later. Full squad in the room. Instructor Catherine running it along with 2 proctors from the exercise staff. They played back the footage. All of it, unedited, helmet cams synced together, so you could watch the whole 90 seconds from 6 different angles at once. Nobody in that room said a word the entire time it played. When it ended, Catherine didn't ask the usual questions. He didn't ask what we'd have done differently, didn't run his usual line about reading the moment before it happens. He just looked at the room for a long moment, and then he looked at her. "Cadet Reyes, where did you learn to do that?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter than I'd heard it in seminar, quieter than the flat tactical tone she used when she was working a problem out loud. "I didn't learn it here," she said. "I learned it the first time I had to leave someone behind and it went wrong. I promised myself it wouldn't go that way again. That's not tactics, sir. That's just not wanting to feel that particular thing twice." Nobody in the room said anything for a while. Saran, who 3 weeks earlier had called her cold under his breath in seminar, was the one who finally broke the silence, and what he said stuck with me longer than almost anything else from that whole year. "I used to think the scary thing about her was that she didn't seem to feel anything." He was looking at the frozen frame on the display, her, down on the ground, hand pressed to her ribs before she'd pushed herself back up. "I don't think that anymore. I think the scary thing is she feels all of it, all the time. She just decided a long time ago not to let it slow her down when it matters most." Catherine nodded slowly, like that matched something he'd suspected about her since the very first seminar, since that cold, flat answer about the wounded going first. "That," he said, "is the entire difference between a soldier and someone who has only trained to become one. Most of you will spend years learning it. Some of you, if you're fortunate, will never have to learn it the way she did." He looked around the room at the rest of us. "Be grateful for that, and don't mistake her quiet for coldness again. I made that mistake myself reading her file before she arrived. I was wrong." Part 8. I want to tell you the story ends there, tidy, with everyone understanding each other and the strange human girl finally accepted. It doesn't, not exactly. Kesh Vanter wasn't a place that changed its culture overnight because of one field exercise, and there were cadets who stayed wary of her the whole rest of the year, who still whispered about the scar, about the sleep logs, about what exactly had happened to a person before they learned to move like that at 19 years old. But something did shift. The rumors changed shape. They stopped being about what made her frightening and started, slowly, being about what made her worth having on your squad. Cadets started requesting her for joint exercises. Dreeth Asan, the cavalry cadet she'd put on the mat in 90 seconds flat back in week 2, ended up training with her most mornings that spring. And by the end of the year, the two of them were close to inseparable, in the specific way people get who have decided mutual respect matters more than pride. I asked her once, near the end of that first year, whether she thought humanity would actually make it into the compact, whether all of this, her, alone, first one through the door, was going to matter. She thought about it a long moment before she answered, looking out at the storms on the gas giant the way she always did when she was working something through. "I don't know," she said, "but somebody had to walk in first and let people see we're not just what the footage shows, that we're not just the war. We're also," she paused, searching for it, "this, whatever this is, people who get scared and go back out anyway." I think about that a lot, actually, more than almost anything else from those 4 years. Because here's the thing that took me the longest to understand, longer than the sparring match, longer than the field exercise, longer than anything Instructor Catherine ever said in seminar. The terrifying thing about her was never some hidden power, some secret strength, some biological trick humans had that the rest of us didn't. The terrifying thing was that she'd already paid the price the rest of us were still just training to imagine. And she walked back into a room full of strangers who didn't trust her, and did it all again anyway, because somebody had to be first. That's not a secret that scares you because it's dangerous. That's a secret that scares you because it asks something of you. It asks whether you'd have gone back out too. I still don't know my answer. I think that's the real reason I never forgot her.